My name is Henry Foster, and I'm standing in one of my favorite spots in Oviedo because right over there in 1878, the Methodist congregation built what they called then Foster Chapel. I'd like to tell you a little bit about how that came to be and how I came to be a resident of Oviedo. I was born in 1821 in Vermont. By the time my Oviedo story starts, it was shortly after the Civil War. And my sanitarium, my business in Clifton Springs, New York, allowed me to take 2 months every winter as a vacation for hunting, fishing, and recreation. In 1869, I met my friend Meredith Brock, Captain Meredith Brock, in Palatka, and he convinced me that that year's 2 months vacation should be spent in the area of Lake Jessup because the hunting and fishing was wonderful down there, and he was right. And I kept coming back year after year. In 1874, I came back with my new wife, Mary Edwards, and we purchased 29 acres on the north side of Lake Charm, here in what would become Oviedo. At that time, it was really Powell's settlement and the Lake Jessup community. Well, the Powell's settlement was named after Reverend George C. Powell, and he and I got together and I encouraged him to serve several churches in the area. And we, in effect, founded several churches in the area. Among them, the Methodist congregation built Foster Chapel, the First Baptist Church, which is now over in Center Oviedo, the AME Church, the Methodist Church in Geneva, Baptist Church in Orlando. All of those were begun by George C. Powell as preacher. And I supported several of them. Mary and I were encouraged throughout our lives to serve the people as best we could. And we supported those churches. This particular chapel, it's not here, and I'll tell you why later. This particular chapel we furnished with pew and pulpit and organ and stained glass shipped down from New York. And it was for that reason that the congregation referred to it as Foster Chapel. The reason the chapel is not there is because this property, donated by John Mitchell and his wife Henrietta, was intended to be a cemetery all along, and only a year after the property had begun to be a cemetery, the congregation decided to move the church, the chapel, to another site here in Oviedo. Well, John Mitchell and his wife Henrietta donated yet another property, which is now at the corner of King Street and Lake Jessup. And to get this chapel over there, in those days it was very simple. Cut enough logs to put the chapel on the rolling logs, cut a big enough swath through the forest, and take a few days with a few teams of oxen to pull that chapel to the new site. And that was done. I wasn't here while it was being done, but one of the stories that came out of that move was that Captain Meredith Brock, my old friend who introduced me to this area, was sitting in that chapel playing the organ on the way over to the new site. Well, all of that is really only a small part of our story here in Oviedo. And it'll probably be saved for another time, because right now I just want to encourage everyone to say thank you to the Oviedo Historical Society and their History at Home series during this COVID season, the Oviedo Preservation Project, who will resume their cemetery risings in 2021. In the meantime, serve your fellow man and remember the historical stories. And thank you for being with us.